Good morning. Bonjour, les amis. I'm Bonnie Stewart with the Faculty of Education at the University of Prince Edward Island. And my message this morning in many ways ties together a number of the pieces that have already been brought forward. So I'm delighted to have the chance to speak to all of you. My first question is, how many of you recognize this picture? It's a picture of Prince Edward Island upside down, tweeted from space by Honeybee fan, Commander Hadfield, former commander of the International Space Station. And it had a great deal of resonance with the residents of PEI. I've seen it as a number of people's Facebook profile in the days since. And when I think about what we're here to do today and talk about the stories that we will tell ourselves for Canada 150, I think coming up with the stories is your job, but the idea of how we share those stories is what I want to talk about. Commander Hadfield, for those of you who are not familiar, has been the commander of the International Space Station since December and turned over command last week. And while he was up there, with the help of his adult son, he opened a Twitter account that gained a great many followers. And what he did was he shared stories and pictures of the view of Earth, various places on Earth from space, that has essentially revitalized our cultural idea of space in a way that, to be honest, I have not lived through. And he did the coolest thing. The last night before he gave over command, he actually released a video of himself in space singing a rewritten version with a happy ending of David Bowie's Space Oddity, the Ground Control to Major Tom song. And it has had over 13 million views on YouTube since. His story, Commander Hadfield's story, is essentially a story of the 21st century. It's a story of networks. And what he has done is brought people together in a way that I think we need to be thinking about as we move into thinking about Canada 150. To be a part of a network is an identity shift. It is not just a matter of taking sort of our traditional models of you are your job and moving them online. How many of you can name the last commander of the International Space Station before Commander Hadfield? I'm sure he was very good at his job because the space station was still there to turn over, but we don't know who he was, and he did not manage to capture the public's imagination in that way. I am a huge David Bowie fan, so I was very charmed by what Commander Hadfield did. But what networked identities are, and so those are people who are using online networks to build profile. Like business, like education, networks are reputation economies, and they are a particular kind of identity where you are participating. The web is not just a giant TV, and it really can't be used in a pure consumption way if you want to maximize what you're going to make out of it. Now this is the, how many of you recognize this logo? Remember this logo? This was Canada 1967. I was also not present, but this was an institutional age. In 1967, we had Expo 67. We founded the Order of Canada here in Canada. The Leafs won, apparently for the last time. It was an age of great institutions. But institutions are in a time of great shift. They are criticized for not being nimble. And what I think that we can do with the many institutions and entrepreneurs here today is build a synergy using networks to get these stories out. We're moving into a networked age. And online networks create different forms of identity, legitimacy, and belonging. So when you think about Commander Hadfield, you cannot think about a person operating simply within the boundaries of their job description, but rather exceeding it in particular ways that allow for the key, which is connection. I happen to live this way myself. I am a PhD candidate, I am a teacher. I do both of these things, being a learner and a teacher, openly and publicly. I talk about the things that I don't know. And I also talk about the things that I do. And I share the stories of myself as a person and as a professional openly online. And what that has enabled me is a public learning space and a public knowledge space. And in many ways, you don't need to be the commander of an international space station to build a network, to build influence in a network. But what it does allow for is for people who don't necessarily have positions within the hierarchy of our conventional institutions to be part of the storytelling and connecting that we so need for 2017. How do you succeed in networks? What are the lessons we can learn from Commander Hadfield? You need to own your story and the place that you are. And the most powerful thing that he did was to share with everybody what the Earth looks like and how we are all together on it from the unique perspective that he had from space. This says, I'm sure this river takes itself seriously, but it makes me laugh, right? If you have a unique perspective on the world, and of course not all of us are in space, but if you have a unique perspective on the world and something makes you laugh, then you can share that and build yourself a network through those stories of how you see the world as it is. Commander Hadfield was asked last week at the interview when he came down and landed what made him so successful. And he said, I think people found not just purpose, but poetry in what I was doing. And he also managed to make it fun. And this is one of the big places where I think that our conventional sort of 1967 era ways of going about building a national story in a two-channel world, which we had in 1967, it is one thing to control the narrative and build a national story. In a 1,000-channel world in 2017, you need to be more personal. You need to be willing to laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. You still need to recognize that you are very able to do your job, but also to be a person and be open and public with all of those things. This is Commander Hadfield. Before he did the Space Oddity cover, he actually ventured into music by doing a version of the Harlem Shake in space, the very first, and he was absolutely terrible and knew it and made everyone laugh. This is Mount Vesuvius, seen from space, the little hole. And all around it are 500,000 people who live within the danger zone of the next possible eruption. It's very difficult to look at that picture and not empathize and recognize the humanity and the common humanity that we share. And one of the things that networks can do is build our sense of our common humanity and help us see ourselves in each other. To move towards 2017, what I posit is that we need a new sense of the public commons. And now, Commander Hadfield did not go to space alone. We need the institutions of this nation. We need our entrepreneurs, but we also need the networked voices to be part of building this sense of a public commons. Our institutions, the Confederation Center, our universities, our governments, Parks Canada, all of them have an infrastructure, human capital, all of the organizational pieces that we need to pull together this new who are we going forward, this new story going forward. But within those institutions, there are also people at lower levels who may have stories to contribute and to tell. And if we manage to harness all of those together, the institutions, the entrepreneurs, the networks, then I think we can have a really powerful story going forward to connect with each other using social networks as part of our 2017 Canada 150 celebrations. Thank you very much.
Bonnie, could you define one step further the term public commons? What
Sure.
you want to see happen and what could happen?
The idea of a commons is something that belongs not just to those who have the means within society, the private means, to participate, to take ownership and to share, but rather something that belongs to everyone, from the smallest person to the most powerful person. And that concept of a public commons, to me, is essentially our inheritance as Canadians, and something that I very much want to see protected, fostered, and made visible and exciting for the next generation, just in the same way that Commander Hadfield made space travel exciting. That sense that we are all in this together and we all have a vested interest in what Canada becomes.
That's Bonnie Stewart, folks. Thank you,
Thank
Bonnie.
you.